Hey, what's up, everybody? Yellow Turtle here with my co-host Beef. Welcome to another episode of the LUKSOfam podcast, brought to you by KEEZ. The LUKSOfam podcast is meant to be a short and informational show where we provide some takes on the latest LUKSO news in the space. Today, however, we have a very special guest from the LUKSO smart contract development team and longtime KEEZ member, B00ste. Beef, B00ste. How are you guys today?
Doing pretty well today. Super excited for the conversation. Excited just overall in general. I'm starting to get some life back in me after my COVID dance. So that was my first one. It kind of rocked me. But I'm feeling alive, and I'm very much excited to talk to B00ste. This is my first convo with voice with B00ste. So really excited to dive in with him. B00ste, how you doing today?
Hey, everybody. Actually, today I'm doing great. And not only today, in the last couple of years, actually, since I joined the LUKSO. But yeah, this is our first talk, live voice, true. And pretty excited, to be honest. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna have a fun talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you here. Thanks for taking the time to join us today and be on one of the episodes of the LUKSOfam podcast. We appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So if you want to hop right into it, I guess first question on the agenda for today is, how did you become a smart contract developer at LUKSO and a part of the KEEZ community? And, given our background, I know you have a pretty interesting story. It's not the conventional way to become a high level developer in this space. So I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the listeners would love to hear as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think 3 years ago I first heard about LUKSO. I was still in high school, probably in the last grade or something. And yeah, I saw LUKSO. I saw Ethereum for a while, and was diving a bit into the Solidity and the smart contract space and how they work and all the stuff that you can do. Doing some courses here and there, some YouTube videos. You have plenty of resources online to study absolutely everything that you want. And I mean, I just started it as a hobby to see how things work, what you can do to test the water basically. And then yeah, straight jumping into LUKSO, we had some great community members. We started doing fun things, fun discussions, VR nights. It was crazy. Then we started to try to do some tech stuff with KEEZ, and then also LUKSOverse appeared later on, family clothing and stuff. So it was mostly trying to help out the community and do stuff for the community, basically to help others, right? Actually, Mboy from LUKSO, from family clothing, one day asked me, like, "B00ste, why are you not joining LUKSO? Aren't you trying to work with them directly, right?" So I just jumped straight into it. Applied it as an intern, as a smart contract developer, and yeah, I was very lucky they accepted me, and like it has been a very great road since then. I've learned a bunch of stuff, like a lot. So I had my first 6 months as an intern, and then moved to full time. So it's been a great journey. Like the team is great. I met the people from LUKSO in person, and like probably I'm not sure. I don't know if you would believe something like that, but like, usually in any type of groups, you usually have at least a person that you have issues with. Like it just happens. It's normal. People have contradictory thoughts, and it's okay. But I was quite surprised. But when we met the team from LUKSO, nobody had any issues with nobody. So it was absolutely great team. Great.
That's really cool. Yeah, I remember those VR poker nights. That's back when I didn't have a VR headset. And yeah, we still do them to this day. I think there was one last night. So that's really
Oh
cool. And
wow.
then for you to go and work with these other projects in the space. Yeah. And then, that was when leading up to the hackathon last summer, right? Almost a year to this day. Well, the hackathon was still going on during this time. You were working with us, and then ultimately got the
Yeah.
internship at LUKSO. So it's really cool to see you a year later enjoying what you're doing, enjoying the space.
Yeah, we just threw down last night actually in VR
Go ahead,
poker.
Biff.
I was just gonna say we just had
How was it?
a VR poker
Who
sesh
won?
last night, and your boy was killing it. Me.
Nice.
maybe some of the other guys at the table will say I didn't do as well, but I mean, as far as I remember, my recollection is I cleaned up pretty good, especially from Rob G. But hey, yeah,
Oh, it's
we're
fun.
super happy to have you with the KEEZ fam, LUKSOfam. It's awesome to hear your journey. Just kind of diving into the role that you play in your knowledge base, talking about smart contracts and the standards. LSP0, the universal profile. At its core, kind of what was the driving force behind the creation of LSP0?
I mean, LSP0 has been, it's like the most important, I think, in my opinion, the most important standard that's coming from us right now, and it's been audited multiple times. And the driving force actually it's to have a smart contract based account and to have it flexible enough, but not too flexible, and also secure for people to use in like everyday tasks, and to be able to do anything that they want on chain with a single or two free profiles. But like maybe you want a profile for a social life, you want another profile for, let's say, DeFi to degen a bit, right? And maybe another universal profile for collections, right? But the underlying tag is that you have a profile that you can extend with different functionalities and do crazy stuff with it, and basically the way you use any other application to be as easy to use a smart contract based account, like to give people the same user experience as downloading an application from App Store, right, or from Google Store, and to just use it, right.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of having millions of profiles for every site that you go on is should be a thing of the past, and I think that universal profiles will be a thing of the future. So can you explain the limitations of externally owned accounts, EOAs, for some of our more non-technical audience so that they can begin to understand why the transition from a simple EOA to a blockchain-based account, smart contract-based account is so important?
So what are EOAs? EOAs are some like just some keys. You have like the most basic stuff that you can use on Ethereum blockchain, right? On EVM or on any other blockchain as well. It's just it's something that user doesn't need to know how to use. Doesn't it's not it shouldn't be mandatory for a user to use blockchain to know what is a private key and how it works. It's the same how you store like your passwords for every account that you own for Google. You don't know how it works. You just know you have a string of characters that you have to remember, right? You know you have to remember your email or username and stuff, and you just connect, and that's it. You don't have to know how it's stored underlying, then how the underlying text stores it, and how are the connections made between your front end and the back end of the application, right? You just need to log in and to use the application, and whenever the password gets leaked or something like that happens, and some unfortunate situations, you just change it, right? You forget the old one and get a new one. But again, you don't know how it works in the background. You have a very easy user flow. While to compare it with the LSP0, it's basically kind of the same experience as an account. You just have your universal profile. You don't know the private keys and stuff. You just have a UP, and whenever something happens to your private key, the backend automatically asks you to change something, or even does it for you, and you don't have even to do anything. You just it's just automatically updated. And one big problem with the UAs is that you cannot attach any kinds of information to it. It's really basic. You can only sign messages and sign transactions, and that's really very, very basic. While on the other hand, with EPs, you can store any information that you want on your profile. And the most basic example is the metadata, the LSP3 metadata, that you store your username, some website of your preference, maybe Twitter, Discord and stuff, and your profile picture, your banner image, and some description and stuff. And that's the most basic information that you should be able, in my opinion, to store on your profile. If you take a UA, you cannot do that. So it's just impossible.
Yeah, it's awesome that it gives you the flexibility there to put in more data, to attach things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on when you think of EOA limitations comparing to the ERC 725 standard?
I mean, in terms of execution, we try to achieve the same things that EOA is able to do. And so we try to achieve the same possibilities for the ERC 725 as well. So you have an ERC 725 can do the same things as a EOA can do, but on top of that, you can have all these additional things that are helping you to interconnect with other applications and have a single point of reference for all your data.
That's sweet. That's sweet. And so this might be a dumb question, but I feel like there are no dumb questions because this is meant for a more non-technical audience. When you said earlier that when you make a universal profile, you don't have access or you don't see your private keys. Where are your private keys stored in this case? Because I know
You
it's not
actually,
like MetaMask where you got to write it down and hide it in 7 different places. Because the whole point is for the user experience to be better, right? So, where are those stored?
you can actually access them in the browser extension and see them and and export them. But like that, I would say that feature is meant for people that are more advanced. Like if you don't know how to, and like it's not even about if you don't know how to use it. If you don't want to have the burden of knowing how to use this stuff, you don't have to. Right, it's handled for you. But if you want, you actually can access it and get your private key and do whatever you want with it and change it and stuff. So in terms of that, it's pretty flexible.
Awesome. Awesome. So moving on to some other standards, and I think we'll touch on this a little bit later because I want to talk about Jean's idea of creating these recipes for LSPs. But first, before we do all that, I want to hop into the LSP1, the universal receiver, because on outside of the universal profile, I find that LSP1 is one of the most talked about standards. And so could you break down the significance of the LSP1 and how it changes the dynamics of transaction notifications?
Yeah. Yes. So for the LSP1, basically the big idea behind LSP1 is to have this notification on-chain notifications or even off-chain notifications based on events that happen, right? So we can split those in two different talks. So for the on-chain stuff, you have some hooks that are called whenever you do some actions, and you can have custom reactions to some specific actions on chain. So basically, let's say the most known example, I guess, it's receiving tokens, right? When you receive tokens in your universal profile and your UP gets notified about it, you can have a custom implementation that sells your token for you. It converts it to LUKS, for example, or to USDC or to whatever the token of choice is, right? And so that's that's a type of reaction to a notification on chain. Or you could have, for example, you can receive an amount of tokens from a specific address, and then let's say that address sends you the monthly salary, right? And you are a father to children and you have a wife, right? So you can program so that every time that you receive that salary on a monthly basis from a specific address, you can split and send those assets to your wife and to your kids. For just as an example, you can do 50 to yourself, 25 to your wife, and 12.5 to each of the childs, right? That's again a reaction, an on-chain reaction that can happen exactly because you have LSP1 on your universal profile. We can also talk about off-chain notifications based on events. So the apps could, for example, receive this event, which is called universal receiver, and based on that, they can determine what happened and why was your UP notified. And so you can have custom messages popping up in your application or receiving notification on your smartphone from a specific app that, hey, you received something, you received tokens, or you received tokens and you sold those tokens, or whatever the case may be. You can have an infinite amount of different notifications that you care about and that you want to see. And so it allows for LSP1 allows for both on-chain and off-chain notifications, which is great. I think it's needed in order to use universal profile in a standard way, and for different applications to know how to react to specific things in a very standard way.
Right, right. That's really cool, and I think the way that it's been explained by other people in the space and by Fabian and some of his talks and his conversations is that you get to kind of customize how you interact with assets coming into your wallet, right? Which I think is really really important. And so the example that's always been tossed around, as Fabian has given it a few times, is that like say some scammer were to try to send you an asset, right? You would have the
Yeah,
ability to reject that asset before it even comes into your wallet, before you even interact with it.
yep.
Would that, so again, from a non-technical perspective, how would one go about setting that up in the future? Would that be custom code that they would have to write to their universal profile? Could it be through some interface like a D app where you kind of essentially like upgrade your universal profile so it has these functions, or is this something that's already built in?
In terms of that, you can have thousands of different LSP1 universal receiver delegates, right? Different kinds of reactions that you want to set up for your UP. The way how I like to think about it is like an application store, right? And you have verified developers that they might sell it to you, they might not, just code for specific reactions that you want to have for your UP, right? So the way I want to imagine it is that you go into an application and you have a bunch of LSP1s that you can choose from, and you choose it, right, and you see what it does, and you see if it's for specific assets or if it rejects most of the assets, or you can see clearly in the description how it's done. You can see that the developer is verified, and there might be a process of like verifying developers so you don't attach some scammy stuff to your UP, right? But that's like another discussion. So yeah, that's how I try to imagine it, like an application store for LSP1s, and you just hop in, read the description, and then you click on it, install it to your universal profile, send a transaction through a relay service, right? So you don't pay any gas fees. So I think this kind of interaction are achievable with a universal profile, and this kind of user experience is achievable. It's just we have to wait and see who does it first, I guess.
Yeah, that's got me really excited to be able to kind of piece together different aspects of how I would like, it to interact for me. Like if I wanted to send any licks that I receive automatically into my vault and
Hmm.
have that like be built so that it does that as soon as I receive that particular asset is awesome. I love that feature, and especially
Yeah.
like when I start diving into all these awesome projects that'll be on LUKSO, just whitelisting certain contracts that, like, say like luck chill whales or something like that, to automatically again go into my vault when transferred, when I buy it or when I receive it. um, it just gets me really excited. Just all the possibilities of what's coming just gets me hyped.
Yeah. One more touch on that. We usually talk about your UP receiving funds, receiving NFTs, or receiving tokens, right? But there also can be the other side. You can be a sender of the token or a sender of the NFT, and you can set up LSP1 that, under certain conditions, doesn't allow for that specific transfer to happen. So you can think it's both in, like, in a accessibility mode, like when you receive tokens, you do automatically something with them, but you also can have this part of security side. When you send some tokens, it should be only under a certain set of conditions. Otherwise, don't send them, right? So that's also, I think it's a great example of how you can use LSP1.
Yeah, that sounds like it's going to have benefits for both developers and the users. So that's
Yeah.
great. Kind of changing gears, talking about LSP14, the ownable two-step. How does that enhance ownership security?
To touch a bit on that, is it's pretty, actually, LSP14 on itself, it is nothing special. It has a bit of touch from us about by including the LSP1 hooks there. So that's our, like, specialty touch. But otherwise, it's pretty much the old ERC 173 standard, which has been here for a while. Initially, we needed it with a two-step process for transferring ownership and for renouncing ownership, which is why we actually created it as a separate standard, to have a more secure way, let's say, to transfer ownership of your contract, and to, like, to be sure that when you transfer ownership and the person accepts ownership, that means that that specific address is controlled by someone. It's not a random address. It's not an address that's not controlled by anyone. It's like, it's very assumed that you accept ownership of something, right? And when you transfer ownership, you also have this possibility of canceling it if you transferred it by mistake, right? um, and for the renounce ownership is the same pretty much, because it's set up in a way that you renounce ownership once, and then you have to wait an amount of time, so it then can confirm the renouncement of ownership. So to me, this is like a more assumed way of managing owned contracts, because if you have a single transaction for any of those two, it's mistakes can happen a lot. So it's unfortunate to lose something because you didn't. Yeah.
Right. Right. And so this kind of goes back to the idea of, helping to protect against scammers, right? Like putting it into two steps and not allowing them to take all of your things in one single go, right?
Yeah. I mean, blockchain is still kind of, let's say, not a very safe environment. In terms of transferring ownership, we try to do it in a very safe way. So you, for example, you cannot transfer ownership and accept ownership in a single transaction. So you still have a chance to cancel it if for example, a malicious user gets to transfer ownership of your UP. He still has to do the second transaction, right? So I would say that's great in terms of security. But you also have to be very careful of how you manage your EP, because if you get to the point where someone can transfer ownership of your EP, it's already in a very precarious situation, I would say. So you have to take care and to set up some limitations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's still the case of, being extra cautious, being extra careful, because the risk is still the same, right? Losing potentially all of your assets or something like that. But with these standards, it allows you to have a lot more flexibility and have the opportunity to protect yourself in
Yep.
a more multi-leveled way.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can protect yourself in multiple ways, so that's great. That's great.
That is definitely one of the aspects that I'm most fond of is the customizable security. I know we keep coming back to that, but I do think that's one of the things that makes LUKSO so great is the ability to piecemeal together your custom tailored security solution for that specific individual, and then having the ability to add this stuff on without having to make a whole new account is just a game changer.
And so, on the topic of ownership and security, so what is LSP 17 contract extension? I've heard a little bit about it, and what is so important about it, and for like a contract's future adaptability.
So one great example of LSP17 extension is my colleague Maxim has recently tried to use UP in a combination with EOC 4337, right, the count abstraction standard. And so he did that by leveraging LSP17 contract extension, which basically what it does is that it allows for your UP to be called with more functions that it initially has. To break that down to be more understandable, it's your UP has a very basic set of functions that you interact with. You have execute, batch, you have set data and set data batch, and then you have the ownership functions, which is transfer ownership, accept ownership, and renounce ownership. So that's your basic set of like interactions that you have with your UP. What LSP17 does, it allows you to add custom functions attached to your UP. So you have to set up a smart contract with, let's say, the basic like or follow from social media, right? And people just call your UP with the function like or follow in case like it's pretty straightforward. If like someone likes you, likes your UP, uses the function like from your UP, which is kind of cool because you have a single contract where you can do a bunch of stuff. So you don't have to know where is it's more, I would say it makes it more easier for developers, but also for it allows for a better user experience, right? Because for a developer, in order to like your UP, he'll probably set up another contract like for the social media, right, where he handles all that stuff. So you have to go to the contract that he developed and like my UP, while LSP17 allows you to go directly to MyUP and like MyUP directly without having to care about some external contract, right? So it's kind of having a single point of interactions, right, and doing different kinds of stuff with a single UP, not multiple contracts.
Right. I think I remember the first time this came up in conversation on Twitter. It was Yaman's thread, and it was when the ERC 4337, the account abstraction standard on Ethereum, came out. And one, the point of this thread was universal profiles already do it better. But two, if you really wanted to use ERC 4337 on your universal profile, you could use the LSP7 contract extension to write that to your universal profile and use it. Is that correct? Am I thinking?
Yep, yep, yep. That's exactly it. And also, I can share it. Let me see if I can find it quickly. He even has a video. He even has a video which is quite great, and like it shows you what's possible, and it's crazy. Yep.
Yeah, I'd
Let
love to
me
link that in the description of this video for sure.
uh, found it. Let's get the link. Yeah, here it is.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll
Hey, it's
definitely get
kind
that linked up
quite
there.
yeah. It's quite interesting how you can use different extensions for your EP. And again, going back to LSP1, how I explained the application store, the same. I kind of like to imagine having the same thing for LSP17 as well. It's kind of similar in terms of how you attach that information to your UP. So you could have the same marketplace for LSP1 and for LSP17 for different notification handlers and for different LSP1s, but also for different LSP17 extensions, which allow you to add different way more functionality. Like you can literally attach anything that you want. Like I tested it with DAOs. So I tried to set up 3 different contracts, right? One for voting, one for proposing, and the third one for executing that proposal based on the votes, right? Because you can have different types of creating proposal. You can have people, everyone can create proposal. You can have a restricted amount of people that create proposals. You can have token gated proposals, and it's quite, you can have different extensions for that, right? You can have one extension that has allows for everyone to create proposal. You can have another extension that restricts it, right? So in that way, you can also have a UP that is a DAO, right, with the correct extensions in place, and you just you extended the functionality of the UP with 3 different functions: propose, vote, and execute, right? Which allows it to be now controlled by a DAO, which is, I would say, it's very interesting.
Right, right, and that kind of I really like this idea of the marketplaces and having the different standards and different
Yeah,
ways to
right.
interact. Yeah, it's a really cool idea, and I think it plays into what I mentioned earlier and what Jean had tweeted about a week or two ago about recipes for these LSPs and kind of seeing some use cases that combine multiple LSPs together. Is that another opportunity for something to be on some sort of marketplace, like the combinations of LSPs, or would that be more use cases for like something like a D app?
The idea of recipes, or how I see it mostly, it's to compare. You can have a UP, for example, for your social persona, right? You can have then another UP for I don't know, on-chain avatar or on-chain in-game avatar, right? The underlying things that you need for both of those are kind of the same, but the context is different, right? One is created for specific social interactions in social applications or stuff like that. The other one, on the other hand, is a game character, right? That you use. Or then again, you can use your UP as a DAO, as we discussed earlier, and that's again another context. But the underlying tech is very very similar, right? That's how I see recipes. I see recipes as having the underlying tech, which is very similar, but switching the context depending on what use case you need.
Right.
It is like underlying. If you think about it, it is a combination of different standards. Because, for example, for your UP, you might use LSP3 metadata standard, right? But for a game character, you would use, let's say, LSP99 game character metadata, right? So
Right.
it would kind of be a combination of different LSPs, but it's more like a switch of context and to know how to use different universal profiles in their own specific way, which I think it's very flexible.
I know I'm going to set up at least 3 right off the bat. So very excited to get that rolling. So kind of closing closing up, wrapping up. What's your most memorable experience working at LUKSO so far? And what can we do as community members to contribute to help LUKSO and the team make more memorable experiences?
To be honest, I think we discussed this with Jan as well, the LSP20. It's like, it's still mind blowing how easier it became to interact with UPs after that small detail. Like not having to care about the owner of your UP, it's it's just, it makes everything so easy. Like and like we couldn't imagine this before LSP20, but when Maxim came with this idea, it's like to be frank, at first at first I was a bit like against it. I was like, no, like why would you do that, right? But when you test it and you try to use it and you see that you don't have to do all this extra stuff as a developer, it's like it's mind-boggling, and it's so easy and so satisfying to just interact directly with your EP and to make it the centerpiece of your interactions, not not giving a damn about who your owner is and stuff, and going for different contracts and searching for who is the owner of this EP, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I cannot say it like explain it to non-tech people how what is the difference, but like in terms of developer experience, I think that was one of the greatest additions to the LSP0. It's just very good, and I would say that's, to this point, I think that's one of the greatest memories. In terms of community, I think we got a great community, and I think we got quite a few great builders and people that try to share the knowledge and try to build stuff with this. And honestly, the greatest thing that the community can do is just break shit. Basically, it's the it's how KEEZ started, right? Just break things and make friends, right? That was the initial saying, right? So just try to break everything and try to use it as in the most crazy way you can imagine, and try to do, like, if you think something is stupid, try to do that again and again until it becomes something real, right? I mean, just build, share knowledge, make friends. We have a lot of great people in the community. So, to me, it's been like, this community has been a great for me. It welcomed me great and helped me a lot to develop myself. So I think everyone can benefit from that. So that would be my advice.
Awesome. Well, before we go, I just want to thank you again for coming on and taking the time to enlighten us with all your answers to these questions. I know the community will be really thankful. I think you had some really insightful answers that were also non-technical enough that people will understand as well. So before Beef signs us off, thank you guys for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. It only helps us out more so we can keep creating content like this for the LUKSO fam and the LUKSO ecosystem. So Beef, if you want to sign us off, take it away, man.
Yeah, for sure. As always, remember, none of this is financial advice. It's just a couple of dudes talking about what we love.
Peace out.
Peace.